So I have recently bought a Hornby Dublo Deltic, which I've always wanted, and I picked this one up because it looked like it was in reasonable aesthetic condition and would make a nice addition to the collection for my Coventry railway station layout that I'm developing. Although I realised that actually it's very unlikely that a Deltic could have ever been in Coventry. So I need to find some sort of plausible story to justify its presence, or not, as the case may be. But I picked it up because while it looked good, it was sort of ambiguously reported as being for parts. But the description also said that it tried to run, but it seemed like the resistance was too great. So that seemed like it was worthwhile getting and seeing what the deal might be, because it could have been some, I guess, basic mechanical binding or something like that. So got it and took it apart. That mechanical components seemed to be free enough. There was electrical continuity from the pickups through to the motor. So that all seemed fine. So traced it to a motor problem. The ring, I believe that must be a Ringfield magnet. It's not amazing, but it does have magnetism, and I'm actually gonna make a separate little video about this. But I was looking through a model railroading forum this morning, and someone there said that they'd got an app on their phone which basically was a magnetic field reader. I couldn't find the exact same one, but I found very similar products, and I got a free one, and it does seem to work. Technically it seems to be for detecting studs in a wall, but it definitely works. And the person in the post gave a kind of a threshold, and they said if your magnet's reading at least 1,000 giggly watsits or whatever they are, generally they regard the magnet to be fine, and this is well over that threshold. And I've sort of cross-referenced that against some of my other locos that work. So this magnet's not amazing. I think it's been taken apart, and actually I've taken it apart. And the sort of the screwdriver test is quite similar, I suppose. But that loco runs fine. So I think the magnetism here is fine. But I continued to take it apart and identified some problems with the armature. Now I've done very little, even servicing work on Hornby Dublo locos, so this is not in any way from the perspective of someone who knows anything about these things. But I have found it difficult to find particularly video coverage of what these items look like when you pull them apart. So I thought that's what I would do, and then I'm hoping that maybe people who have a lot more experience and know more might be able to help me out. But I found what I understood to be unusual readings. So where the bit of solder is here, this coil was disconnected from the commutator, the brass bit at the top, where the other two coils had their wires intact. I followed some guidance videos and took some continuity readings, and to me it seemed peculiar that I had continuity between this segment so continuity between the segment with the broken wire and the next segment, so that seemed fine, but no continuity between the broken segment and the preceding segment, let's say, or between the two segments that had the wires to the coils fully intact. So I've mentioned before, I've been using a bit of ChatGPT, so a bit of AI to try to help me get some quick answers to questions. in this new field that I'm exploring. And the suggestion there was that, so what I did, I performed a crude repair, which is the solder here. So from the broken coil back to the communicator, just to see if that returned the continuity, to see if that was the problem, and then therefore if that was something I needed to upskill in terms of being able to do. But it didn't make any change. So again, yeah, using my artificial intelligent friend, I concluded that this probably suggested that while the most obvious damage was the broken wire, there was some problems deeper inside the coils. So because I'm a bit impatient and I like taking things apart and learning things, I decided to start taking my the Armature coils off with a view to rewiring it. Now this, I know, is pretty advanced stuff, and there are a lot of people who have a lot more experience with model trains than I do, who say, oh, I wouldn't do this. I would always send it off to a professional. But it's not really an option as far as I'm concerned. And it seems more fun to have a go. So what I have done is I started to take this apart. Now I started with the coil that was broken, and I managed to unwind a few rotations. The wires were generally seeming like they were stuck together, so I understand there's very possibly maybe a seal over the top of these to help with the electrical insulation, but I don't know if that should necessarily be the case, if wires should be kind of difficult, particularly at certain stages, to prise away. And then after certain points the wire broke because I'm sort of pulling it off, it was too stuck to the other wires. And then on that coil anyway, I reached a point where it seemed like, as you can see, there's still a fair bit of wire on that coil. It was almost like the wire was tucked under another wire, and as I tried to unravel it, it broke off. So I stopped with that one because I wanted to see how that compared to some of the other coils. This is basically sort of from my academic perspective, I'm ignoring all the existing theory, and I'm engaging in kind of abductive research. So just exploring the world as it is and seeing if I can build some sort of conceptual and theoretical understanding from ground up. Not necessarily the best way of doing things, but it's fun. So I thought I'd see what happened if I took off one of the other coils. So yeah, as I've seen in other videos, cut the wire, unraveled it. Now, this is when I got to thinking, actually, maybe this is interesting to share. So unravel this entirely. Again, the similar sorts of problems, but particularly initially, unraveling seemed like the wire was kind of stuck to other wires. Now, one possibility here is, so the AI analysis suggested that it could also be a combination of being shorted and burnt out, or kind of burnt. Shorted and disconnected. That's right, which would explain the weird kind of pattern of the continuity readings on a communicator. Computator? Don't know. I've been using other languages too much recently. How it is you say, my English is falling from my head. Yeah, so wondering whether actually the sticky wires that I found on this one as well are possibly a symptom of some sort of burnout or problem. But so I've unwound that completely, and sort of the two things that I was interested by. So the first one being what I think is the original insulating material. So between the, because of the metal windings and the magnetic field need to be insulated from the rest of the armature. There's as I understand it, an insulating layer which is put on first before the coils are wrapped around. So just a little interlude on something that I wish I'd known before. Now I've realised that the way these things are constructed, so the wire that wraps around the poles in the individual coils, probably has a copper core, but then is insulated, and this stops the wire within the coil touching against the other wires in the same coil and creating some sort of short. So it ensures that the electrical energy runs around the whole coil to create the necessary effect to rotate the motor. But this insulation isn't considered durable enough, so it might become damaged as the pole is wrapped, or during kind of wear and tear of the motor's life. So even though the wire comes with an insulated sleeve, it is then insulated more thoroughly from the core of the pole, as I was just talking about, with another material, and you can get special electronic magnetic insulation spray. So that's what I'm going to be using when I rebuild this this motor. Having learned that the wire is also insulated does raise the slight concern with me that this was the real reason that when I crudely resoldered the loose wire back to the commutator, there was no electrical connection because I hadn't stripped the insulation off. So possibly all this has been for my own silly fault, not for a good reason. However, I'm choosing to believe that there was other problems. And this is a bit like it's a bit of a waxy substance. So that's what's coming off, and you can see that there. But also underneath, this is really hard to show clearly. There was some kind of brown, black, more black gunk that was more on top of the wires, on the underside, and also around the sort of the tops of the metal poles where the coils are, and that could be, I wondered. There we go. You can see it there. So the sort of the black gunky stuff. So if I can put that down, yeah. So this black gunky stuff here, it's solid, but you can peel it off, and it is a bit like this. So I'm not sure whether that is just a bit of an untidy original job, and that's the insulation material, or whether that is symptomatic of some sort of problem. And it was kind of in this gunky stuff that some bits of the wire seem to be stuck. So that's my one interesting finding, and which, as I say, I've just never really seen videos of people showing this kind of stage when they've worked on these things. And then the other thing that I found interesting, so this is the end of the coil that I've unwrapped entirely. And so I was reading about this in the theory, so not entirely abductive research, but was understanding that the three coils in these types of motors are joined at the bottom, and that's what I've got here. So again, really hard to show. So on closer inspection, I have decided that this is definitely the case, or it is definitely the case, that we've only got two wires around this 3-pole armature. So the end of the wire that I've unravelled from one of the poles is a single wire continuous with this coil. And then you can see here, so the other coil that comes off heading down onto this coil here is soldered around it. So I am pretty sure at this stage that this 3-pole armature has two wires, one that does two of the poles, and a second wire that just does one of them. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the wire that I think is its own separate thing, and then continue to unravel the wire that I think is continuous, although I'll have to start at the other end because this end is going to be trapped under the, well, I guess it depends how it's put together, doesn't it? But either way, try and unravel it so I end up with what I think will be two pieces of wire, one which will be twice as long as the other. Right, let's test that theory. So I have managed to strip off all the wire from my commutator. I think it's probably commutator. And it's looking quite good. But so this mess of wires is the coil that was originally had the broken wire, and tried my best to unwind this slowly and steadily with a mixture of tweezers and my fingers, but it was, all the wires were just so, I don't know. Initially I had obviously the wire that was sticking out that wasn't attached, and I think I got like 2 rotations off before it broke, and then I think I picked it up again and managed to do a few more, and then at some point I lost it. But the wires were all so kind of stuck together, and particularly towards the inside were all embedded in this the sort of the gummy layer, which I think is the original insulation, so it's original to the motor. But I'm wondering whether that's what happens when they overheat and the wires kind of, so they wouldn't say they were melted together, they didn't necessarily, but they were definitely kind of bonded and didn't come away. So maybe this explains, maybe I'm hoping anyway, I haven't like absolutely destroyed this for no reason, but I'm thinking this should have been easier to take apart. So that's the one coil. My other coils, so then I haven't done this amazingly. One coil I've managed to get off relatively easily, a couple of long sections and then some smaller bits. And that coil I have got a count of the turns, or at least some numbers I can add up to a count, and then I'm going to try and measure the length. And then the other coil, how did that go? The other coil I uncoiled and forgot to count the rotations, wherever my pen is at the back here. So all I'm going to be able to do is measure that. So I'm hoping between the measurements and having at least one tally of counts, plus other information on the internet, I can go about rewinding it. But yeah, this situation is what is my reality of having a go at this, and doing my best. So that's where I've got to now. For reference, when I added up the individual bits of the one coil wire that I'd taken off, it came to 313 centimetres. The second coil that I was able to measure came to 307 centimetres. So that seems quite nice. They're reasonably similar. I couldn't measure the third coil because unfortunately I had to shred it to get it apart. Then if we have a little think about the number of turns, now I was only able to, well, I only counted the turns on one of the coils that I removed, because one was obviously shredded and I just forgot in the case of the other one. But I got 160. Now that seems to compare reasonably well. So again, I've consulted or used the artificial intelligence tool ChatGPT to source some info from the wider net, and the number of turns, 150, 160, is kind of within a range that it reports, and so is the distance for that cable. This also squares quite nicely with some of the information provided by the wonderful Ron Dodd in one of his videos. Now he states that he rewinds many of his motors to have extra turns. Now the reason that he does this is to give it more torque, so it's got better control at lower speeds. And he talks about rewinding sort of 200, 300 turns, for which he's built this wonderful bit of equipment, which one day I might try and replicate. So this seems to work quite well. And I've also sort of a wider bit of knowledge I've picked up. So I consulted ChatGPT as to what the difference between different thickness of wires were for these coils, and it came back with information drawn from other places that thicker wire I guess intuitively will lead you to a smaller number of turns, which would create a faster motor, but with less torque and power and control at a lower range. Conversely, thinner wire, I suppose, in and of itself, and also the fact that it allows you more turns, gives you that effect of greater torque. So I've ordered some bits. My next stage is to do some rewinds, which I may or may not share with the world, depending on how it goes.